Tropical rainforests are noted for their diversity of species. But they're being destroyed at an alarming rate. And at the same time, we're losing the traditional knowledge of local forest farmers on the efficient and sustainable exploitation of the forest. In this programme, we compare the ecology of the traditional form of forest farming with that of the cash crop monocultures, which often replace the forests. 1,000 years ago, the Mayas and Olmecas built major civilizations in the jungle. They were masters of exploiting the rainforest and used a sophisticated agriculture to feed a large population. Today, their descendants, the Popolucan Indians, still farm in traditional ways. The shifting agriculture of forest farming follows ancient, well-proven slash and burn techniques. It's a temporary use of the land to grow crops for a few years, followed by a longer period of fallow. Typically, they move every 2 years with 10 years fallow. This allows the natural process of succession to accumulate mineral nutrients in the vegetation, which can be released at the next burn. It's labour-intensive farming and needs a lot of forest in which to make these temporary clearings and move on. The relentless deforestation of Mexico has made the Popolucans retreat with the rainforest to rocky slopes. Their small cultivated fields, called milpas, still involve slash and burn agriculture. It's worked well for thousands of years, but now there isn't sufficient new forest to move to, and so they're forced to return and reuse the soil more frequently. More work for less returns. To our eyes, accustomed to neat, cultivated fields, this may look a jumble, but in fact, there's good ecological sense in this farming. It is not a maize monoculture, but a polyculture based on maize, beans and cucurbits. The beans supply a significant amount of nitrogen to the system, and the shared space utilisation by the different plant structures means that about twice the amount of land would be required to produce the same yield from separate monocultures. It's an ancient practice traced back to the Mayan civilization. Jose Arellano from the Biology Institute of the University of Mexico has made a special study of tropical agriculture, particularly the small-scale subsistence farming of the Popolucan community of Santa Rosa.
Estamos caminando en una milpa de Santa Rosa.
We are walking in a milpa of Santa Rosa in which we find a great diversity of plants. Can you tell us what type of plants are here?
Well, here we have many plants, like maize, papaya, quelite, squash, and we also grow grasses for horses.
Why do you leave all these maize canes from the previous crop?
This litter helps provide humus to the soil so as not to apply fertilizer.
Then all this rubbish on the ground will assure fertility for several years.
Yes, this helps a lot in maintaining soil fertility.
And the tree trunks and these small trees, do you protect them when you clear the ground and burn it?
Yes, we leave them because they are useful for many things, and their leaves serve to feed the soil.
You are the proprietor of this milpa. Why are you working like this? Why are you growing all these plants?
Well, the plan is that we want the fruit trees here, and whilst they grow, we have to kill all these weeds. Whilst the large fruit trees are growing, we can use the land for some small temporary plants.
Like the watermelon, true?
And beans, everything you see here, the tomato, all are temporary plants. Later, the trees, which remain for a longer time, go on growing, like mango, orange, and chinini.
And when the maize has grown to the point of cropping, you can grow beans up the canes.
Yes, because the maize is bent over and left there as a support for the beans, improving the crop.
And when you abandon it, everything begins to grow again and fill up with weeds.
It returns to the forest, but we can grow these plants in another milpa which we make.
You don't leave the soil bare.
No, never, but without cultivation. Then after 2 or 3 years, we can return to make another milpa here.
Mixed cropping systems like this also seem to have inbuilt resistance to insects and disease. Many varieties show high resistance to local pests, and the increased chemical and structural diversity often poses restrictions on the rate of population growth of the pathogens. Trees have a fundamental role in the milpa in terms of nutrient cycling, microclimate modification, and as providers of a vast range of products. These people live in intimate contact with the forest. They build their homes with materials gathered from the forest. No nails are needed here, and the palm thatch roofs will last a generation. This is the home of Lorenzo Martinez. His forest garden, called a huerto, contains an amazing array of herbs, shrubs and trees.
This is a papaya tree. The fruit is very tasty to eat. Okay then, let's enter to see what other plants there are here that you can tell us about. Here is a little coffee bush, and there is a tomato below. Here we have a small banana tree, very good for eating. And down here is chili, very hot and spicy, growing in the shade of the orange tree. And the pitoya cactus, itself seated up there, produces a delicious red fruit.
Que es una fruta que se come muy rica. Muy bien. Sí.
This is oregano, a herb.
Para condimentar.
And this is achiote, a condiment used to color food. The seeds are boiled to redden meat.
Sí, es el nanche.
The coffee over here likes shade.
Ajá. ¿Y esta malanga?
This malanga likes humid soil, lots of water, and produces a very tasty fruit.
Es un camote
And
muy
this is the
sabroso.
papaya, which gives large fruit, very sweet.
Grande. Muy dulce. Bueno.
These are all natural forest trees. We use the cedar wood for tables. The condoria has edible fruit, which we can sell, and the wood is also used for our houses.
Se usa la madera para las casas. Sí.
A lemon tree and the anona, a very tasty fruit. It also comes from the forest. It's a tree that grows high and likes plenty of sun.
Ajá.
These are wild plants,
¿Que nacen solas?
self-seeded, like chipilín.
Este.
And this matalin helps provide humus to the soil.
Sí. Otro quelite.
Another quelite to eat, and this cempasúchil serves for decoration.
Para adornar los altares.
This is a big lemon tree used for jam. Grows in open condition.
¿Crece en la sombra?
Doesn't need shade.
Sí. ¿Por qué?
This spearmint is put here because it would dry out in the dry season. It needs much water.
Sí. Necesita más agua. ¿Y esta hojita?
And these leaves are a pepper vine used as a condiment to spice our maize cakes. It needs to grow more in the sun and needs lots of water too. That's why we've got it here.
Muy bien, don Lencho, muchas gracias.
So in this huerto there are over 30 species of plants grown in close association in less than half a hectare of land. Most of them are self-seeded. Trees are a vital part of the system, not just to provide food, fuel, timber and medicine, but they also provide a suitable habitat and microclimate for other plants and increase the efficiency of nutrient cycling. This multi-layered arrangement of herbs, shrubs and trees makes full use of space, provides a varied microclimate and gives a greater productivity per unit area than could be achieved from monocultures. In fact, some of the crops here would give very poor yields as monocultures. Pepper and chilote vines require support, whilst coffee needs some shade, such as from a tree like Gliricidia sepium, which is an important nitrogen fixer and also provides a mulch when its small leaves fall. There appears to be great ecological knowledge here. Plants which regenerate naturally are carefully managed, some being removed whilst others are encouraged. Some plants are deliberately grown in association with others. The use of mulches and nitrogen-fixing species are key aspects of the system. As well as household waste, the garden also benefits from waste from chickens, turkeys and pigs. The diversity of plants in this rainforest-like structure is astonishing. In this area, over 244 species have been utilised. Most of their food, medicine, fodder, timber and fuel are derived from their small farm homesteads. Any surplus crops are taken to barter at the open market. Here at Minatitlan, it's still possible to see some local forest products, even though much produce now comes by truck from elsewhere. Fruit and vegetables of all kinds, many domesticated from the wild, some recognizable, some not. Many plants unique to this area, some for eating fresh, others to be cooked. Banana leaves are used to keep food fresh for market and during cooking. Some are medicinal plants. Herbs and spices are also common. Many exotic fruits grow only in the tropics. The many rivers and marshes provide nutritious varieties of fish and freshwater turtles. Chickens and turkeys and other domestic animals are always part of the open markets of Mexico, but here you sometimes see wild animals too. The presence of this market, with its vivid mosaic of people and produce, should remind us of the remarkable potential for useful products which the tropical rainforest can still provide. For example, recently near here, a primitive perennial species of wild maize was discovered, growing in damp conditions and seemingly immune to pests and fungal disease. But the genetic resource which these wild species could provide for incorporation into existing and even possibly future crops is rapidly being eliminated as the rainforest is destroyed. Agriculture in most of the world's tropical forests has seen a major shift towards monocultures. Here, it's mainly cattle ranching for export. Sometimes pastured with them are bald sheep, reared for their meat rather than their wool. Cash crops such as pineapple, sugarcane and tobacco are also economically important. But these systems require the addition of large quantities of manufactured fertilizer and pesticides, particularly in the humid tropics where the soils are usually nutrient poor, but phytophagous insects are abundant. Tobacco growing is often mechanized and produces a low yield in these conditions. So quality is emphasized in the production of this high-value luxury commodity. The delicate seedlings require very careful nursing and protection from the intense sunshine and rainfall. Before planting out, the soil must be rigorously cleared of plants and the roots as well. The crop must also be constantly kept weed-free and disease-free, with lots of labour and use of insecticide sprays. The soil is often bare for long periods of time during initial growth and after harvest, and then heavy rains can wash away the topsoil. So, every year, organic matter and fertiliser must be added to partly compensate for erosion and loss of nutrients. Many of the local people find it hard to set up their own enterprises based upon monocultures due to the high costs of many of the necessary inputs. And once embarked upon, they're committed to a treadmill of diminishing returns, with government-maintained low prices for maize and ever-increasing costs of inputs.
We are talking with Mr. Felix Castellanos here by his house which he has close to the river of San Juan Evangelista. Mr. Felix has been living here more than 15 years, and he has seen when all this area was still covered in forest. Now, how is the land different after 15 years since it was rainforest?
When it was 15 years ago, it was more or less a different land from now.
Different productivity?
Everything was different from today when we are living.
Before, did you produce the same from your labors on the land?
We produce more with less work, and today we produce less, and we need to put in a lot more money and work into the soil.
Before, did you have to put anything into the soil?
No, nothing apart from clearing the forest, burning it and seeding it with maize. With the burn we got a milpa.
How much did you produce?
From 4.5 up to 5 tons per hectare. Right now we are producing about 2.5 tons to 3. Well fertilized and well worked, as you can see.
Such a difference. And before, when you had the rainforest, what other things did you get from the soil?
It gave rice, it gave beans, it gave whatever you seeded. It all grew. Before we sow 1 kilogram of beans and we produce 100 kilograms. Now you sow 50 kilos, and if you lift 20 more, that's a lot.
Mr. Felix, when you put on fertilizer, now that you are using fertilizer, what quantity do you have to apply to the crop?
Well, at present we are using more or less 300 kilograms per hectare.
And how much do you calculate you will make?
Well, if the luck is good, I must get at least 400,000 pesos to gain 200,000. Otherwise, it's not worth it. Right now, with fertilizer and all that goes with it, costs are close to 200,000 pesos. And if the luck is bad, friend, even then the costs aren't recovered.
Perhaps the least efficient form of land use here is cattle ranching. 1 hectare of the best grassland here would only support 1 cow. But the same land retained as forest would support several Popolucan families. And at its worst, each cow would require almost 20 hectares. The major question, though, is for how long? Grazed land rapidly deteriorates, and even if the land is left fallow, the absence of seeds from nearby forests means that the natural process of forest succession stops at an early stage. What you get here is a waterlogged landscape, mainly palm trees and shrubs, nothing higher than 10 meters. And the remnants of tropical forests are constantly being transformed into human-established pasture lands.
Well, here we are in a pasture land which was in the past tropical evergreen rainforest, as we have behind us. All the species that we see here grew naturally. For example, here we can find various species of grasses. 2 species dominate, Axonopus compressus and Paspalum conjugatum. We can also find other species like the legumes, for example, Mimosa pudica. When you touch the leaves, they close at once, and many other legumes that help introduce nitrogen back into the soil. In only 1 hectare of rainforest, it's possible to find more than 200 species of trees and more than 10,000 individual species of plants. All these are substituted by a grassland like this to feed just a single head of cattle. It's a very profitable practice, and it's favored by Mexican legislation. That's why more than 90% of the country's forests have already been substituted by rangelands.
The main disadvantage of these monocultural systems is that they depend on a stable or increasing demand from richer countries in the north. Labour use is often restricted and highly seasonal, and there's a tendency for mechanisation to replace human labour. They are often less productive in terms of total dry matter production over a number of years. They require large quantities of manufactured fertiliser and pesticides in a continuous battle against insect pests and disease. and there are often problems of deterioration of soils and microclimate. Obviously, somebody must benefit from this system, but it's rarely local people. Also, there's little pressure to improve cattle ranching efficiency, while it's cheaper just to clear some more forest. It has been said that tropical rainforest is a desert covered by trees. Remove their protective cover and rain is no longer absorbed. The water table drops, organic matter is rapidly oxidized, and erosion of the hard-baked soil rapidly occurs with the onset of the rains. Wide rivers like the Coatzacoalcos, which once flowed through dense rainforest, are now laden with silt, evidence of erosion upstream. In contrast, streams in natural forest remain crystal clear.
The idea has always existed that tropical forests are extremely static and unchangeable. But studies that have been carried out in this forest and others in the world have shown that forests are extremely dynamic and changeable, and have a great capacity to regenerate themselves when the perturbing systems are natural, such as, for example, gaps caused by the tree falls, or even a certain degree of human management like slash and burn agriculture. But when the disturbances exceed certain limits and are very extensive or very intensive, as occurs with large forest clearings to create pasture lands or extensive monocultures, then a point is passed at which the forest cannot recover, and the natural process of succession to a new forest is almost completely stopped, and it's impossible to regenerate a forest with the structure and floristic composition of the original.
What's needed is further development of agricultural systems like mixed cropping and agroforestry that use the natural diversity of species to maximize production and sustain soil fertility. By using local species and local knowledge, there's the potential for integrating agriculture with rainforests, capitalizing on diversity rather than destroying it. Most of our important crops like maize, potato and tomatoes originally came from these rainforests, and many important drugs too. How many have yet to be discovered? Traditional agroforesters like the Popalukans probably unknowingly hold the key to managing this land in a more productive and sustainable way, which will not destroy the rainforest. Their great practical knowledge, handed down through generations, is an ecological legacy, just as much as the tropical rainforest itself.